when the boat comes in.
Hello and welcome to the first When the Boat Comes In podcast with me, Chris Watts. I have to say I'm a big fan of the show. I was very lucky to interview Susan Jameson a couple of years ago. Fantastic to speak to the actress who played Jessie Seaton. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at each episode of When the Boat Comes In. I'm going to be talking about it, and then I'm going to be sharing clips from the show. If you want to get involved in this, please type on the YouTube page below and you can get involved if you like. So in this episode it starts off at the Picture House. It's a Charlie Chaplin film, isn't it? And this is when Jack Ford meets Jessie Seaton for the first time. And it's quite funny because Jessie Seaton thinks that Jack is laughing at the brave Tommies that were going off to war, but he actually finds it ironic that everybody believes that all these brave Tommies just went over the top and they were very happy about it. And as you can see in this clip, it was kind of a false narrative that the picture houses were putting out there.
There must be something wrong with your eyesight. Charlie Chaplin's not on till later.
There's no wrong with my eyesight.
You thought that was funny.
Now, Jessie.
Well, I wouldn't say exactly funny, no. You look like an educated woman, Jessie. Maybe you can tell me the word I'm looking for.
Watch your mouth, mister. That's my sister you're talking to.
Oh, hi. Got a bit of a temper, hasn't she?
No, look here.
Take no notice. He's been drinking.
Beats up an atom, Jessie. Every time.
It's such a great series, When the Boat Comes In. I was introduced to it by my parents. I loved it. I got hooked. And then I've been introducing it to as many people as I know, because it has kind of gone under the radar, I would say, and it hasn't been repeated on the BBC or been shown on many channels. It was on the Drama Channel for a little while, wasn't it? But then they took it off after the second series, I believe. So I've got the DVDs, I can watch them whenever, but it's good to let people know about this series because it's fantastic, very addictive. And in this first episode, this is where Jessie and Jack first get together. Big romance, obviously, and then it doesn't last, does it? Unfortunately, we'll get onto that in other podcasts. But in this first episode, you get to know the Seaton family because, of course, Jessie invites Jack back to the house, the Seaton house, and of course, her dad isn't very happy about this. He says that it always starts with a talk, doesn't it? It always starts with a chat, and then it can go on to other things. And then, of course, they're dancing, aren't they, later on? And, you can tell there's a sort of romance blossoming, kind of. But, Jessie and Jack's relationship, very interesting, isn't it? Very, very different, I'd say. I mean, different because of the era, of course, because Jessie's got so many responsibilities. She's a school teacher. And, in fact, in episodes to come, you find out that Jessie is actually paying for the rent and everything else because her dad has gone on strike, hasn't he? He's a miner, and she's the breadwinner. So Jessie has got a lot on her plate, and of course later on in the relationship she can't become pregnant because if she becomes pregnant it's going to jeopardise the family, and we'll get onto that in other episodes. But another main theme of this first episode is definitely shell shock. Because somebody that went to war with Jack, and also you find out later his best mate as well, he went to war with him. They see him at the pub, don't they? And he's acting very strange, and that's quite a funny scene though, because they offer him a beer, and of course he takes it, he drinks it, and later on they find out that the doctor said don't mix alcohol with his medication. And of course, this keeps going on, and he's suffering with shell shock, what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder, isn't it? And there's the scene where he falls down in the street, and Jessie says to Jack, come on, we got to help him. But Jack doesn't really want to get involved. And later on, she finds out that Jack went to war with him. But as Jack says, there's nothing he can do for him because he's still fighting the Germans in his head. And this keeps going on. He keeps doing things like this. He'd be in bed, wouldn't he? Be having nightmares about the trenches. As you can imagine, you hear these stories all the time, don't you? From the past, and even today, when you think of conflicts. And yeah, it keeps going on, and then eventually, unfortunately, he kills, or he beats up a Byrne, doesn't he? I think does he kill him or does he beat him up? I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, he hits him, doesn't he, with an implement, because he thinks he's a Nazi. He thinks he's a German from the First World War. So yeah, eventually this leads to a court case. Jack defends him, which Jesse's mum can't believe, obviously, because, hurting Burns. I will use the lingo on this podcast, but I'm not going to try and talk Geordie, because I'm not a Geordie, but I love the show, but I will use the slang. And anyway, yeah, so she can't believe he's going to stand up for this man who's hurt a Byrne, but at the same time, you can see it from Jack's point of view why he's doing it, and Jesse kind of agrees with Jack, and he stands up for him, and this is against Pinner, who is going to be the local MP. He's on the jury, isn't he? And he never got a medal. He never got a medal, and he thinks he should have had a medal. That's the thing. And the man with the shell shock won a medal, so he was jealous of this, and he got sentenced. There was nothing Jack could do about it. So yeah, it shows you the differences between now and then. I would hope so, anyway, because now they would take everything into account, you would think. Shell shock, post-traumatic stress disorder, all that. Back then, no. He just couldn't help himself, I think one of the judges said. So, yeah, that's kind of a sad part in the story, isn't it? But the best bit for me has to be the ending. I really love that, is when Jack gets all of his men, all the troops, to line up. They've got medals, and they just throw them all down at Pinner's feet, because it was just totally out of order what he did to that soldier. I mean, obviously it was terrible what he did, but there was, it wasn't just a callous act. It was post-traumatic stress disorder, or shell shock, what they called it back then.
Beg pardon, sir. Oh? We heard you were in the army.
Yes, Sergeant, I was.
Only you didn't get a medal. Not like us lucky buggers. Well, you can have mine. And Will Scrimge's.
Well, Constable, what are you going to do about it?
There's no law against being given a medal, sir.
We sure to met Jack?
Aye, maybe. But he's still our Member of Parliament.
Of course, Mary gets married to Tom in this episode, and it's a very good way to introduce the characters, I think, a wedding. And I think there's a very funny line where Jack's at the pub with Matt Headley, and Matt asks him, "Is it your wedding?" And then Jack Ford says, "Not yet, Bonnie lad, not yet." And I would say Matt Headley is one of the favourite characters on the show, isn't he? He's probably my second favourite character. He's a very funny character. And I think later on, it's actually in the last series, this guy who's a kind of a gangster, he says to Jack that you weren't loved, you were feared, but Matt Headley was loved. So it does show you how they were very different, but as a team later on, when they worked for the Fitters Union, they complemented each other very well. And I think the wedding, as I say, is a great way to introduce the other characters, and it's great for the era kind of thing. I mean, because you see, of course, people dancing along to piano music, I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles, stuff like that. And yeah, it's kind of a shame that doesn't happen so much anymore, couples dancing, etc. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a very good start to the episode to have a wedding. It's very sad, of course, what happens to Mary later on in the series. I mean, tuberculosis, wasn't it? TB, of course, back then. And just terrible if you think you can just die like that from nothing. But as I was saying earlier on, very hard times back then. That's why I think it's a fantastic series. Would I have liked to have lived back then? No, because there was a lot of inequalities, weren't there? And there was a lot of... It was just very tough, wasn't it? And I also think that's one of the appealing things about the show. You watch it and you think, well, actually, my life isn't that bad, really. I mean, what am I moaning about? Because these people had it so tough. So it's a very good first episode, I'd say. It really sets it up. Sergeant Jack Ford, you see him for the first time. He's wearing his uniform, isn't he? And yeah, a Charlie Chaplin film at the beginning at the Picture House. You're introduced to a lot of the characters. You're introduced to Jesse's brother and also his wife, Mary, and the mum, of course. I mean, there's so many great characters in When the Boat Comes In, but I think it's the whole Seaton family that makes it for me. I mean, we'll get onto this later when we talk about the later series. I didn't mind them, but I didn't like them as much. I think it was the last one I wasn't so keen on because it was very, very different, wasn't it? It was about Jack making his way in the world, and Jessie and her other brother, Billy, were in it, weren't they? But that was near... You know, they weren't in many episodes. I think they were in the last episode together, weren't they? All three of them, which was good, but yeah, had a disappointing ending. But oh well, maybe it was quite realistic. I don't know. But anyway, it's great I'm able to do this now. I've managed to find some time because I've been very busy over Christmas, and I was going to do it last year, but I've been busy doing stuff. So yeah, I'm going to be going over every episode of When the Boat Comes In. And as I say, if you want to get involved in this, all you have to do is... type below on the YouTube link and say if you want me to talk about anything in particular.
When the boat comes in,